Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to our services tonight. Today is World AIDS Day, December 1st, 2014. This is a day that's recognized throughout the world as originally established. I'm going to let Nancy touch on this again, correct? Original. The whole purpose of World AIDS Days is to bring about the awareness of the AIDS epidemic. Here locally, we have a Tri-County AIDS Task Force, which was created back in 1990. It's been in existence for 24 years. The counties are Jersey, Calhoun, and Greene counties. Primarily the participants are the health departments, but there are other agencies and other individuals that participate as well. So we have a wide, diverse group within our organization that does try to keep the awareness of what AIDS is all about and the projects that go along with it. Locally, the AIDS Task Force focuses on a program called MELD, Making Educated Life Decisions. The nurses from the respected health departments, Jersey, Calhoun, Greene, go to the schools and speak about this. Their goals is to inform the students that all their consequences, the decisions they make early on in their life, has long-term effects. So they explain the process of what sexually transmitted diseases do, the process of alcohol, and how all this can have a lifelong effect on your bodies and on decisions you make. So the MELD program is our primary focus of what we do with our task force, and we do other things, but this is our primary one. So I always like to give credit and kudos to the nurses of the health department for dedicating their time and services and knowledge and going about to the school districts, speaking about this program to the kids and educating them on the various ways to make lifelong decisions that will have healthy consequences as they go. I always like to say, I've been 14 years old before. I've been 13. I've been 15. Like most of us out in the audience. These kids have not been 40 or 45 years old, so they don't understand the long-term consequences that decisions you make when you're early, like we all did when we were younger, can have what they can do with the effects of our bodies and our minds and our lives as we grow older. So we have a beautiful program tonight. We have the choir with us. They always sing fantastically. I'm sure we won't be disappointed again. We also have with us tonight Reverend Brett Myers from the First Baptist Church. He's going to lead us in a few prayers. I'd like to defer to him now and we're going to have the choir sing a song first, and then we'll go from there. Go ahead. Thank you, Mrs. Tall. I think I failed to recognize that she is the director of our chorus, Alert Girls, tonight. Is it my understanding that Mrs. Hofstreit is also here tonight? She's our accompanist, a longtime musician and very nice lady. Again, I also failed to tell you that Nancy Wollenweber will be our main speaker. She always has a fantastic story to tell, very moving. And at this time, I'd like to once again introduce Reverend Brent Myers from the First Baptist Church for some words of wisdom.
I'd like to invite you to stand and join me in sharing with the union prayer you find in your bulletin this evening. Loving God, you show yourself in those who are vulnerable and make your home with the poor and the weak of this world. Warm our hearts with the fire of your Spirit and help us to accept the challenges of AIDS. Protect the healthy, calm the frightened, give courage to those in pain, comfort the dying, console the bereaved, strengthen those who care for the sick. May we, your people, using all our energy and imagination and trusting in your steadfast love, be united with one another in conquering all disease and fear. We make this our prayer in the name of the one who has borne all our wounds and whose Spirit strengthens and guides us now and forever. Amen. You may be seated.
At this time, Mrs. Tall is going to lead the JCHS Treble One Choir, who are all freshmen, correct? And singing the Dove of Peace.
To build her down.
Thank you all for coming. I'd like to ask, have any of you been to this memorial service before? Mrs. Tall and my committee, but it's, and a few of the students, yes, at the junior high. We always use the junior high course until Mrs. Tall agreed to help us this year, since there wasn't a junior high course that was able to come. So my name is Nancy Wollenweber, and what you're looking at here is just two of some 46,000 panels that look similar to these. And I'm going to tell you everything I know about the AIDS quilt. And if you guys have heard it before, it won't hurt you a bit to hear it again, okay? Because it's a good education. And I apologize for my voice. I may have to take a drink of water. But the AIDS Memorial Quilt is based upon the American tradition of quilting. Probably your parents or grandparents have sold old scraps of fabric together to make blankets, and you may even have some at home. And these blankets, of course, were called quilts. And every quilt I've ever seen usually is very beautiful. And this, too, is a beautiful work of art. And they provide warmth and comfort. And comfort's kind of the key word there. Working together made people feel like a community, and giving them the chance to tell stories, trade gossip, sing songs, and enjoy others' company as they sewed. Today, as people gather together to make panels for the AIDS Memorial Quilt, this tradition, which actually began in San Francisco in 1987, gives comfort in a time of grief, because every person's name that is listed on all 46,000 of these panels has died of AIDS. And some panels, as you can see, have multiple names on them. The quilt has become the most compelling symbol of the AIDS epidemic. And if you don't know what AIDS stands for, it's Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome. Basically, your body cannot fight off any infections that you and I would be able to be cured of. It's an eloquent reminder of our collective loss. It began as one small community in San Francisco. As their response, they had a whole community worth of individuals that died of AIDS, and they wanted to remember their names, and this is how they did it. It was just little, it was actually poster board they put up on the windows of one of their streets at the store windows. And as they put them up there and put them all together, they began to see a quilting pattern, and that's how it all originated. This has grown into the largest community art project in the world. Today, there are 5,748 of these, well, I misquoted a while ago, of these 12 by 12 foot sections. And those consist of 46 panels, 46,000 panels. Each panel is made to remember the life of a person lost to AIDS. If you notice, each panel is 3 feet by 6 feet, which is the size of a human grave. And so each big panel has 8 panels in it. Or each big quilt has 8 panels in it. As the epidemic claims more lives, the quilt continues to grow. And there are, at this reading, 83,900 names on all the AIDS quilts that exist today, and they're all sewn into the fabric. It stands as well for the sorrow of the loss of these people, the anger that might have gone along with the loss of their loved one, and a hope of the people who make the panels that it will help inspire other people not to become victims of this disease. Each panel in the quilt is created by the family, friend, or lover of a person who has died, and it is a testament of their love and loss. Many panels are accompanied by letters and photos, all of which speak to the experience of AIDS, documenting its effect on those lost and those left behind. These panels, letters, and other materials make up a rich tapestry, which is this generation's legacy to the next. The AIDS quilt acts as a permanent memorial to those who have died, inspiring future generations to join in the commitment to remember their names. The quilt is currently 52.25 miles long, if you put them all end to end. Just these two quilts are quite heavy, but all the quilts together would weigh about 54 tons. And the interesting part is this only represents 17.5% of all United States AIDS deaths. So by saying that, I mean there's about 80% more of people that have died of AIDS in the United States that do not have a family because nobody made them one. So there could be a much, much larger quilt than there already is. More than 8 million people have visited the quilt. They used to show it in the mall area in Washington, D.C., but it got too big to show there. And now what they do is it's all on the computer, and you can look through and you can pick the ones you want. And there's a AIDS chapter in St. Louis, and that's where we get ours from. And I just ask for certain numbers as I pick them out on the computer, and we have them for about 20 days, and we'll try to show them to the kids at school too during that time frame. The entire quilt would cover 275 NCAA basketball courts with walkways between each quilt. The quilt shows that AIDS can happen to anyone, anywhere, at any age. There is a 2-year-old on the quilt down there. It encouraged people to recognize their own risk for HIV infection and motivates them to learn and use the information that can save their lives. The AIDS Memorial Quilt is a valuable resource which encourages compassion and inspires personal involvement in combating the AIDS epidemic. It is the world's most visible symbol of the fight against AIDS. Not only does the quilt raise awareness and illustrate the urgency of the epidemic, but it initiates response, moving people to become involved. It is powerful and impressive, and it's like a lasting memorial of those who have died, and a compassionate cry for humanity to pay attention to the AIDS crisis. It has people of all races, creeds, sexual orientations, political beliefs, sewn side by side, held together by a single shared fate. They all died of AIDS. On the front of your program, it says, listen, learn, and live. And that's part of our reasoning for doing this. We want you to listen to our story, learn what you can about AIDS, and then hopefully never become a victim and live a good, long, healthy life. This year, the actual theme for AIDS is the forgotten disease. Every World AIDS Day is done, like I said, to raise awareness and show support for people who are living with HIV. World AIDS Day is a timely reminder about the dangers of a virus, kind of like Ebola, which still has no cure. Today marks World AIDS Day, which is, like Steve said, every year on December 1st. But you may not know or be aware of that fact. The disease has probably slipped off the public radar this year amid the presence of Ebola and bird flu outbreaks. But one thing I want you kids especially to remember, the good fact about AIDS and HIV is that it's preventable. It's not like a cancer that can happen to anybody. It's totally preventable if you just take good care of your body and totally be in control of everything you do. So, no alcohol, no drugs that would possibly make you do something that you would regret for the rest of your life. Just always know that you need to take care of yourself. You're all the young ladies, and you know, you're the future to all of us. You're going to be taking care of everybody out here someday in some way or the other. Ask questions. Search for education about AIDS. Make yourself aware. And if you need information that you can't find anything about it, just go to your local health departments. All 3 of the health departments have someone there that could talk to you just on a private little interview if you wish. So, the AIDS Memorial Quilt's mission is to help bring an end to AIDS, to provide a creative means for remembrance and healing, and to illustrate the enormity of the AIDS epidemic, to increase public awareness. And don't ever forget that it's out there. To assist with HIV prevention, education, and to raise funds. And the funds that we raise, we sell wreaths and do a few other things to raise money, and that's how we provide a nurse in the school system to educate you all. Like Steve said, 2014 marks the 24th year of the Tri-County AIDS Task Force. The first meeting was January 9th, 1990, and that was attended by 23 people. I was one of those people, and it was important for me to be there because my brothers on the quilt on the far left, the dogwood tree. And I think all 3 counties at that time had begun to see that people in Jersey Green and Calhoun County were dying of this AIDS. And in the 80s is when it all began. And by 1989, when my brother died, you know, it was full blown. And we as nurses wanted to do something to make it stop. Our numbers have dwindled, but a small number of us still need to continue to educate the public. And I just want to, I don't think I can do this very gracefully, probably not. But as you see, each panel, this one here is, I assume, made by the VA Medical Center in Kansas City, Missouri. It was made in 1988, which was the prime time that there was a lot of people infected in the 80s. This was apparently, it says Acorn James, or it says James in the middle, and it's got Acorn, Ohio, so that might have been the city he was living in. It's got U.S. Army, and it's got his age. He was 29 years old when he died. Some of them tell more of a story than others. The one that says Greg A. Richmond, plain and simple. Dennis Herlick, he was 33, must have loved ties. That's all I can think. They have a whole bunch of ties up there. This young man doesn't say, well, he was born in 56 and he died in 88. And he had 12 brothers and sisters, and there's all the 12 brothers and sisters listed. He must have loved music. It has a saxophone and a big old 48, or what they call 45 record album. My brother's, he was living in California, and he called us one day and said he was in the hospital. And so my mother and sister went out there because he was critically ill, just all of a sudden to us. And probably back before HIPAA laws are what they are to now, I called out there. I'm a nurse or was a nurse at Jerseyville Hospital until I retired. And I called out there and asked the doctor to talk to me, and he did. And he said he had a big goose egg lump on his neck, and he was extremely ill. And just, I don't know, the things I guess I was reading about HIVs at that particular time in my life, for no reason knowing I was going to go through this, I just said, well, why does he have that? And they said, well, we think it's some kind of tuberculosis. And I said, well, where did he get that? Well, we're running tests, and he may be HIV positive. Well, of course, I dropped to a chair, could not believe that. But a few days later, it was confirmed. And he came home to Carrollton, and we were together for about another year and a half. And he finally died on 6 of 89. He had been married and divorced. He'd lived with a couple of women. He was a licensed mortician. In the 80s, when they used one pair of gloves to where they take the blood out of the body, embalming, thank you. I'm 66 now. I'm not thinking as good as I used to. But anyway, one pair of gloves, and now they usually wear 3 as a precaution of all the things that have happened over the years. He was a medic in the Navy, again, involved with blood exposure in the 80s. Like I said, he did live with 3, married to one and engaged to one and lived with another. HIV is sexually transmitted. You know, I know he never used drugs. And it doesn't matter. He was my brother, and he's gone. But his classmates planted a dogwood tree after he died in our churchyard, and it's still there. And he was just a good old guy. Only 39 years old when he passed away. And it was sad at the time, all the education that had to be done at Jerseyville Hospital. I mean, I worked there 42 years as of this year. And partially because of my brother's death, I know they all have learned a whole new way to look at every individual that walks in the door. We have universal precautions now. You treat every single person that walks in the door as if they possibly could have something contagious. And back in the 80s, you didn't do that. You usually didn't even draw blood with gloves on. You didn't start IVs with gloves on too much. You know, a lot of nurses probably were taught that, but it wasn't any big deal not to do it. So it's been a learning experience. It was a terrible experience for my mother, and you can imagine how she felt. Every time we had to admit him in the hospital, she would say, well, what are we going to tell everybody is wrong with him this time? she wanted me to kind of make things up. But he did have a very rare form of pneumonia, which was called pneumocystis. And it was something that HIV-positive patients just could not be cured from. It was just a deadly pneumonia for them because they had no immune system. So, but I think the health departments around me learned a lot. And like I said, I know my hospital learned a lot too. So this one with the rainbow on it, that's the 2-year-old. Michael L. Derricks. And would you tell me today that most babies that are born with HIV, what was the percentage? So 80% of babies die at least by the time they're 70 years old, or 7 years old, if they are born HIV positive. So that's another way it's transmitted from mother to baby. And we had a lady at Greenfield that talked to the school a few years ago, and she had a very interesting story. Her dad left the family when she was in high school, and so she never really felt loved by a father figure or never felt loved by a man. She went to college. She's a freshman in college. This guy meets her and tells her after a few dates how much he loves her. And if she loves him as much as he loves her, sex would be okay. So she does. And a couple years later, she has another relationship, and a couple years later, another relationship in the same manner. And she gets a job, and she meets a man that she really does love, and he loves her, and they want to get married. So they go and they have their blood work, and she came back HIV positive. And she had had relationships with 3 guys, and they found out by testing those 3 guys that it was the very first one when she was a freshman in college. They infected her. Now she's married. The man that she loved did go ahead and marry her. They can't have any children. Well, they could. They could have children. But she doesn't want to have any children because she doesn't know if she would live to raise them. Her medicine cost anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 a month. She has an education and a good job, but she prays every single day, am I going to be healthy enough to continue with my health insurance so I can take the meds that I have to live? I would never want anybody to have to live that way. I have 7 grandchildren from ages 5 to 20, and the older ones I've already had the talk with, and I don't piddle around with the talk. I lay it on the line, because I don't ever want my grandkids to have to go through what my brother went through. He was 6'1", and he weighed 78 pounds when he died. He's basically, he just wasted away. We kept him at home for the last 6 months. I gave him IVs every night. He had a port, and I gave him IVs every night, and one night he says, what is this doing for me? And I just told him, I said, well, it's keeping you here with us longer. And he said, well, I don't want him anymore. And I said, well, you were a medic in the Navy, you know what that means. And he said, yes, I do. And my boys were 7th grade and a freshman in high school at the time. My 7th grader went over and helped me take care of his uncle every night. If he got him a glass of water, he was elated. He was so happy he helped Uncle Jim. The freshman in high school had a really difficult time. He loved his uncle immensely, but he had a difficult time with dealing with what he was dying of. When he was in college at Eastern, 5 years later, after my brother had passed away, he saw the movie Philadelphia and with Tom Hanks. And it is a great movie. It's an old movie, you guys, but it is a great movie. And you get a really good perspective of what it was like in the 80s for somebody that had AIDS. He saw the movie, and he wrote me and my mom a big, long letter apologizing for the way he acted, which he didn't act bad. He was just backwards to express himself. He never treated his uncle negatively at all, but he just had a harder time with dealing with it. But once he saw that movie, he felt like he wasn't, there for us, but he was. But all in all, it was a sad experience, of course, but it had to happen to some people, and I think I'm a better person for it, and I hope all the work we do as a Tri-County AIDS Task Force makes it better for all you parents and makes you kids think. And so you understand what I mean. You have to totally be in control of yourself all the time. Don't let any other thing ever take control of you, like the drugs or the alcohol or any other person. Just walk away. I'm sure you all have cell phones. I'm sure if you find yourself at a party that you shouldn't be at, just call mom and dad, start walking down the road. Somebody will pick you up. Somebody you know. Don't go with any strangers. So I think we're ready for our next song. got a one-track mind. I forgot to tell you something. In the 80s, people that had HIV looked very ill. In 2014, many of them look as good as you and me. So you can't look at somebody nowadays and think they had a bad disease, HIV or AIDS. So, and if your friend would come to you and say, they're just terribly distraught, they've just found out they were HIV positive. In the 80s, those people were ostracized. It's like, don't touch me, I don't ever want to see you again. I don't want you, you're not my friend. They really need somebody, and it is very safe to be somebody's friend. Probably sometime in the next 10 years, you're going to find somebody that you're going to know on a one-to-one basis that is HIV positive. Just don't turn them away. Give them some support. Let them know that you're there, just like your song said. Give them a hand. Okay, at this time, I'm going to have Reverend Mark come.
Back in 1992, I was serving a part-time church near Terre Haute, Indiana, which is my hometown, and also doing some substitute teaching back in those days. And my favorite place to substitute teach was my old high school. I got to substitute for a lot of my old teachers, and it was 15, 16 years later. Well, one day in the spring of 92, I was substituting and was informed by the administration there was going to be a very special convocation inviting the students down to hear a special speaker. We were going to hear from someone who was HIV positive and who was actively dying of AIDS. And as you've heard, back in 1992, this was still kind of new in many ways. For a lot of folks, the first time you were going to be connected with somebody, it was almost like hearing there was a man from Mars going to be there at the convocation. We went to the auditorium, and the speaker was down at the front, and I looked at him, and as emaciated as he was, he looked familiar to me. And I went down to approach him and found that it was one of the graduates of the class of 1975, my class. It was Barry Streeter, who'd been a very good friend of mine. We'd been on the speech team together, and we'd done plays together, and Barry was just an amazing, fun-loving guy, and always a great guy to have around, and kind of lost track of him over the years. He'd gone to the military. He shared his story with the kids that day and with me as well, that he had led a very promiscuous lifestyle, though he had been a married person and had contracted AIDS that way. It was a very sobering time, but also a very helpful time for kids back then to hear things you don't think might be dangerous can actually kill you. And a few weeks later, his obituary was in the newspaper. That was my first real contact with somebody I had known who had AIDS and lost that battle. I'm aware that several of you here tonight have had loved ones who have also passed, who are remembered on quilts like these, but certainly remembered in your hearts tonight. So I'd like to invite us to enter into a time of silent prayer and meditation together, and just reflect on that person or those persons that you're thinking of tonight and remembering. The holidays are coming. It's always a very special time of the year, but it can be also a very bittersweet time of the year as you remember those who you used to celebrate Christmas with that aren't with you any longer. So let's take some time just to have some silent prayer, then I'll close this in prayer. Gracious God, we thank you for the gift of life. We thank you for the lives of those whom we've loved and lost to AIDS. We remember the joy and the sorrow of those journeys. We thank you for the comfort and strength we find in Jesus Christ. And we thank you for the promise of eternal life he brings to those who put their trust in him. Comfort us tonight, God, and lift us up and give us strength for our journeys. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
At this time, we're going to light the unity flame. And what we will do is, I have a list of names of people we know who has died of AIDS in the Tri-County area, Jersey, Greene, and Calhoun County. All I'm going to give is their first name. Some of them I have their ages and the year they died. Some of them I do not. But I'll read those as Glenda lights the candle. First one is Larry. He died in December 1990. John passed away 1990. Richard, he was 29 years old. He passed away 1989. Bob, Gary, Ronald, he was 44 years old. He died in 1990. Dennis, Ernest, my brother Jim, 39 years old, died 1989. Leslie died September 1995. And Derek was 45 years old, and he died in 1990. I'm sure there's more that we don't know about. And I wish I could name them all, and I wish we could have all done something to prevent their deaths, to help them in some way. But at this time, the treble choir will sing Amazing Grace, and then they'll walk out to the main room around the AIDS tree, and Pastor Marr will say a prayer. And after that, we have refreshments we'd like for you all to share. You're more than welcome to come up and look at the quilt at any time you want. And we'll leave it up until after everybody's left. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.